Didn't know what she looked like, but she was laughing. It was funny. She was weird. And what she said on the call, I was weird? What she said on the call, the first call was, "I'm not having sex with you." And so I'm like,
he was like, well, this call gonna be in the well, talk to you later.
All right, sweet girl, deuces, I'm out.
See your shirt Sunday.
And I'm not having sex with you, by the way. So it was just wild. And then at the end of the call, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but she will.
I can tell you exactly what I said.
It was a Jedi mind trick.
It was not. I'll say exactly what I said.
What'd you say,
we got to the end of it, and I said, I know that this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I know that you've really enjoyed it. However, if you wake up tomorrow morning and you have no desire to call with me, go with that emotion. And so he's like,
Fawn got game. Hold on, that was some game.
Player.
But I told him why.
Why?
Which was it's an answer to my prayer. If you don't feel like calling me tomorrow, go with that, because my prayer was very simple. I didn't have any desire to date somebody who wasn't my husband. That's a waste of my time.
Dear Future Wifey.
Okay, scripturally, the Bible says your Father has already designed and purposed you.
I experienced an invitation of God this morning.
So you got to become an elite decision maker.
Elite decision maker.
He said, because you are one fleshly decision away from losing it all.
Etched in my mind is what true submission to Christ looks like.
I got to maintain that secret connection I have with God.
I'm so full and don't want to belabor this letter.
And I understand how important it is for men to disciple men, because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am today.
I've traded worldly pleasures to live a God-centered life.
The encounter I just had, I just need to rest in it.
Help us to be considerate, creative, and courageous lovers.
I love you. Your future hubby. Welcome to the Dear Future Wifey podcast. I'm your host, Laterras R. Whitfield. Listen, are you still shacking up with us? If you're still shacking up with us, can we get a commitment? Hit that subscription button and subscribe. Make sure you turn on your notification bell so you'll be notified about upcoming episodes. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, do us a favor. Go ahead and rate this episode 5 stars and leave a comment. That's how other people are being able to be notified about the amazing work we're doing on the Dear Future Wifey podcast. And if you're listening to us on Patreon, make sure that if you haven't joined, make sure you join us on Patreon as well. You know, well, let me just start off and say Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Y'all been rocking with me. This April will be 5 years of doing the Dear Future Wifey podcast. And I'm just so excited about the amazing work that God has been doing on this platform. And y'all know I'm extremely intentional about what I start the year off with. January the 1st, I have an amazing episode for y'all today. As a matter of fact, a lot of y'all sent me this viral reel of this dynamic couple. And those that haven't seen it, we're going to go ahead and watch it right now. Take a look at this.
What you're really seeing, though, is a woman who takes God at his word. When he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. But when you see me, you're actually seeing a yoke that isn't just God and me. And I need you to hear this. For every couple in the room, there's a third person bearing far more weight than I ever could, my husband of 21 years. Because of him, I am free in the middle of this yoke. To fly high, to defy odds, to crash through ceilings, to break barriers. The yoke may be on me, but I don't feel its weight. Not with God on one side and my husband on the other. Their strength gives me the freedom to soar. So to my husband, Keith Weaver, who quietly stands in the background allowing me to shine, who lifts me up and encourages me every single day, who's in my corner coaching me through life's toughest matches and raising me high on his shoulders with every win. Keith, you know that without you, none of this would be possible. Yet, you selflessly let the spotlight shine brightest on me while you remain solid strength behind me. I honor you. I adore you. I respect you. I love you. You are my best friend. You are God's angel on earth. Uncle Nearest is being known around the world because you backed me, you hold me, you lift me, you push me, you cover me, you stand in front of me, you take all those bullets for me. You are not just my angel on earth, you are my king.
So y'all know, of course, when I saw this reel, I said, it is my desire, it is my hope, it is my mission that my wife, my future wifey, will be able to speak about me just like Fawn Weaver did about Keith. So without further ado, welcome to the Dear Future Wifey podcast. My new homies, Keith and Fawn Weaver. How y'all doing?
We're great. How are you?
Man, we're gonna jump right on in there. First of all, it's an act of God to get y'all out.
Act of God.
Yeah, during this season, because you said the last 2 weeks of December and the first 2 weeks of January, y'all go away. Y'all go to y'all nice little lake house in Georgia, and y'all just get along with each other. So why did y'all decide to come do the Dear Future Wifey podcast and bless me with y'all's presence?
First of all, I love your show. I love your show. I've seen it quite a bit. And this is my heart. My heart is for couples to be strong, especially within the body of Christ.
Yes.
And you speak directly to that. And what people miss so often when they're looking at our success collectively or separately, what they miss is that this relationship that God ordained is the foundation of everything that we do. And so people look at me and they want me to mentor, which I don't mentor, so don't DM me about it. I'll send you a list of books in return for your request.
Or read your book. They can read your book.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
And but you have so many people that have put me on a pedestal as a businesswoman, as a CEO, as all of these different things. And you don't get that without this. And so subtracting this or subtracting our faith, you can't get the rest of it. So people try to remove this important foundation and our foundation of Christ, and then they still try to build what we're building. It's like, no, that's a different foundation that you got. You're on sinking sand. So for me, my heart is for the body of Christ to be what people want to see and emulate when it comes to relationships, when it comes to marriage. And so the moment you said, I want you to come out. Now, you wanted it specifically for January 1st. I was trying to do middle of January after I have my braids back in, because I told you I don't put on makeup and I don't comb my hair. Like I literally for a whole month.
She really doesn't.
I really don't.
She really don't. She don't.
I braid my hair into 2 braids, and every time we go out, I throw on a Kangol for a full month. Yeah. And so that was the harder part. Was, man, I'm gonna put on makeup and curl my hair
and get on the plane.
And get on the plane.
Well, listen,
on our 21st anniversary.
So let me just say that congratulations and happy anniversary. Happy 21st anniversary. That was yesterday.
Yeah.
And gosh, that's just so amazing. And so that's what I mean by how God is so intentional. I knew that I had to launch y'all's episode this year. Y'all had to be the foundation because, and truthfully speaking, Fawn, I never knew about your business acumen. I never knew about your history, your success. I just saw that reel. And when I reached out to my publicist, she was like, Fawn Weaver, do you not know who that is? I just love what she was saying about her husband. She was like, you don't know who this woman is? She said, go do your research. I looked, I said, oh my God. I had to retract it. So I can't believe I just DM'd her and was like, hey, come on the podcast. I said, man, good Lord. But I love how authentic you are. I love how See, in our first conversation that we had, you were all about, you said, yes, you've amassed this great success, but you said what you love most is love and family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so rarely, we don't hear that a lot, and especially in our community. And so it's interesting what you said at the very beginning was that they can look at all this and see what you've accomplished, but there would be no success on this level without y'all as a foundation and Christ as a foundation.
Yeah.
Do you truly believe that? Like, you don't believe you could have done that by yourself?
I absolutely.
Okay. Put God in it. So you got God and you this single woman. Yeah. You couldn't have done this.
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because the way that he structured my life included him at the base. So you can't, we like to pick and choose what stuff we're going to follow when it comes to the plan that God has for our life. We're like, we want a little bit of this, but we don't want this. We want this, but we don't want this. And that's not how it works. And the best way that I can describe it is if we look at David and Saul, which it seems like an odd type of thing, but Israel was never supposed to have a king, right?
Right.
They insisted on a king. They got Saul. Then Saul did what Saul did.
So hold on, fine. You finna just start preaching?
No.
Go ahead.
Preacher's kid. Funny enough, most of my examples are biblical.
Go ahead,
because I spend more time in the Bible than I do with anything else.
You better teach.
And so when you look at that entire story, Saul was supposed to remain king. David was never supposed to become king, but because of Saul's mistake, God removed the anointing from him, placed it on David.
Yes.
I truly believe that if I hadn't been in order, that what was for me would have gone to somebody else. We people that go, what's for you is only for you. You didn't pay attention to the story of Saul and
Teach. And that's a misnomer. A lot of people actually believe that. I can't miss it. What God has for me is for me. No, you can miss it. You can miss it.
Right.
I tell people all the time, I'm not a fearful person. I just am not. If I have one fear as it relates to business or life or anything like that, is that I would become Saul. So my prayer is always, I want his hand over my life at all times. So I don't really care about other people's opinions, because if I care about your opinions, I could become Saul.
There it is.
And so for me, I need his hand over my life. That means how I treat this man, how I speak to him, how I honor him, how I respect him. All of that is directly tied to my success, and to separate it out would be foolish.
Keith, has she always been like this?
Yeah, I did well, didn't I? Didn't I do well?
so Keith, you talking about when you met her, she was always like this?
Always. And I think it comes from my mother prayed, and we were introduced by my mother.
Oh, really?
Not because I couldn't get my own women, just to be clear.
You were doing real fine in that department. Probably too fine.
Keith, you had no problems. You didn't have no problems.
I didn't have any problems. However, my mom prayed for...
You say he was doing too well?
He was doing too well.
Someone like Fawn and God Fawn. And I think growing up in the household she grew up in with my father-in-law, Frank Wilson, and Bunny Wilson, and there were just things imparted to her and things on her own that growing up in that environment that I benefit from greatly. I mean, one of them was premarital counseling.
Oh, yeah.
And just things that you think.
You're talking about back then.
12 weeks before we planned that was the one request that my mother and father had when he asked for my hand in marriage, was that we would not set our wedding date until we had done 12 weeks of marriage counseling.
See, that's abnormal.
Right.
Because a lot of times,
it was for sure.
Yeah, because they wasn't, especially therapy and counseling, know, for that generation of your father, rest in peace. But they weren't taught that back then.
No.
But you know what? Kenneth Ulmer, do you know that? Okay.
Yes.
Love Bishop.
Yeah.
And his ministry at Faithful Central had a thriving practice for counseling.
Okay.
So even though our marriage counselor was a certified PhD but where he was based out of was Faithful Central.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Ken McGill.
And he now lives here in Dallas, right?
Does he really?
I don't know. In Texas.
I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's here, I'm pretty sure.
So your parents said you have to do 12 weeks of premarital counseling.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what you think about that, Keith?
I thought that was weird. I mean, so I didn't grow up in a church, led home.
Yeah.
So I have a different upbringing.
Yeah.
And then even as I found my faith, which was later in life, this whole notion of this 12 weeks and sitting there, I was like, this is like the Christian Cosby family. I don't know what this is, but I was so into her and so in love with her that I was like, okay, I'll be compliant. I don't think it's really necessary. However,
I don't think it's necessary.
I'll go through it. And what we learned was just even a deeper understanding of one another.
Yes.
Before we ever said I do.
Yes.
And it was, I mean, there's just stuff, sex, money, accounts, child rearing, and you think especially during the you're so cute. Your butt looks good. But then after that, there's like the
reality.
The reality of it.
But back to the beginning, she was always like this.
So what were some things at the very beginning in premarital counseling? Was it ever a moment where y'all felt like it wasn't going to work?
No. But what was so amazing is we asked each other questions. So this is what Dr. McGill would do, is we would have our time with him and he would give us homework.
Good.
And we would then leave and go
flashback.
to what? The local, was it maybe a Starbucks or something?
It was actually Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf.
That's right. Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in Beverly Hills, right?
Beverly Hills.
So we would leave the offices, we'd leave our counseling session, we'd go over to this Coffee Bean, and then we would literally do our homework together. So there's a few things here that I think is so ordained, just God being God.
Yeah.
First of all, his mother called him and said, I just met your wife. And she would not leave me alone until I gave her my number, which took a lot of trying.
Really?
A lot.
Why were you adverse to it?
Because I was perfectly fine by myself. I was fine taking myself to dinner. I was fine. Like I've never had that I must be attached situation. Right. It was, I would go to the movies by myself.
Really?
Absolutely.
You wasn't dating?
No.
Why? Why not?
No. For me, I was building business.
Okay.
And I didn't have time to waste. In our very first phone call,
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord.
So
you tell your version because I'm going to tell it.
Go ahead.
I'm radically transparent, so I'm going to tell you all the stuff.
So
first of all, how old are you at this time?
I'm 26.
26.
He's 31.
Okay.
And his mother owned a hair salon on Slauson, and my girlfriend had been going to her for 15 years, and I finally decided, okay, I'm going to find a new hairdresser. And I've already told you how much I really don't care to comb my hair, right? Yeah. So I need somebody else to do that. And so I was going to her once a week. But the thing about a black hair salon, you got one person in your chair, one person's waiting, one person under the bowl, one's in the dryer. And so it's a 4-hour appointment. And her salon was one of the largest, not the largest in LA. So there were so many people working in that salon, and obviously church gossip, celebrity gossip, that was the thing. I've never been one for gossip. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to hear it. So what I would do is back in the day when you had to literally call in payroll, you remember calling in payroll? So I would bring all of my stuff to be able to do all my calculations and call in payroll while I was sitting there so I wouldn't have to listen to the nonsense. I'd have my laptop, I'd have the whole thing. So for 4 hours, I would work. I never spoke to anybody. And I wasn't rude, but your conversation and my conversation, they don't align. And so I would do that every time. And then I rushed out of the office one day. I was running late. I got there and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring anything. So I had to have a conversation. And we're under the bowl. She's washing my hair. And mind you, I've now been going to her for a few weeks. And the one thing I discovered about her, she never gossiped. Everybody else in the salon gossiped. She never participated. But what she did talk about when she opened her mouth was her one and only son. Keith Weaver.
Only begotten son.
Only begotten son. Keith Weaver.
Angelic.
It was the topic. He had just come and taken her to dinner. He had come and swept all the hair off the floor the night before. She had story after story about her one and only begotten son. So when I'm in the bowl and she's washing my hair and she comments to me that how impressed she is that I'm so young, and she's been watching me for weeks and how I run my business, and she would hear me on my calls and all the rest of that stuff.
What business were you doing then?
I was actually one of the partners for Chef G. Garvin's restaurant. So I put together the business plan, raised the money, was the business manager for that when he wanted to start his own thing. And then I also had my PR firm, but yeah. Right. So there was a good amount
PR
going
firm
on.
Was the first business you started.
That was the first business. Right. It rolled into this and never went away. But this thing became such a behemoth and such popularity, and it was like the place for celebrities to go, and the wait was forever. So it ended up taking almost all my time as we were building it. And so that's what I was doing at the time. And so she commented on that, and she said, I can only imagine what you're going to be doing when you're older based on where you are right now.
At 26.
At 26. And I wasn't thinking anything of it. I'm literally getting my hair washed, and I said, yeah, this is just a pastime for me. And she said, what do you mean it's a pastime? And I said, yeah, this is just what I'm doing for now. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a really great mom and wife. And she literally leaned over to the bowl and she said,
say more.
She said, no. Now, mind you, this is a vulnerable position. You're washing my hair. I'm looking up. And she looks down over my face and says, you got to meet my son. Now, her one and only begotten son is who I don't want to meet. Exactly. Like, are you kidding me? Can you imagine the in-law situation? This is he literally is just a little lower than the angels, crowned with glory and honor. I mean, this is, I don't want to meet your son. And so we get to the end of the appointment. She says, don't forget to leave your telephone number. Because back in the days, the receptionist, you called, you make the appointment. So she didn't have my number.
Oh, God.
And so every week, because she had 4 people she was doing at the same time, every time, she'd say, don't forget to leave your number. I go, and I would bolt out the door. And it got to a place where it was uncomfortable for me to keep doing that. So I had to make a decision. Do I find a new hairdresser, which black hair...
I know y'all don't change.
No. I had just found her and she was incredible. And so I get into the car. I call my girlfriend. I said, can you tell me about Keith Weaver? And she said, oh, Dia's son? I said, yes. And she was like, what about him? And I said, she is trying to set... and her response was, no one is good enough for her son. Now, mind you, my girlfriend had been going to her for 15 years. She said, no one is good enough for her son. And so after she shared with me what she knew about him after, seeing him all those years, and at the time he was a vice president over at Sony Pictures. Okay. And young vice president, one of the highest ranking African Americans at the studio.
Get it, Keith.
And so
that's why you had this pick of the live all the women.
Sowing them royal oats. Sowing them royal oats.
Living his best life.
Living his best life. And so that was that. What I then learned later is that she then calls him and says, I just met your wife. Right. So I finally gave her my number, but he didn't call. And I'll let you tell that part.
No, because she said, I just met your wife. Mm-hmm. And she said she has a really sweet spirit. And she reads, and she's a businesswoman.
You thought she was ugly.
Yeah. I mean,
that's how men interpret all that.
She has a really sweet spirit. So I'm like, I ain't calling sweet spirit girl. I ain't calling sweet spirit girl. No.
And she like to read.
She like to read, and this was we're old. So this is not like swiping and Facebook. There's none of that.
Crack. We are not young.
There's no pictures or anything. So I'm like, okay. And then she kept pestering me. You call that girl named Fawn? And I'm like, oh, I ain't calling. So I go visit her. She gives me a slip of paper, which I still have. Mm-hmm. It has Fawn's number with a little heart on it.
You still have it?
Mm-hmm. I still have it.
Oh, I love it.
I still have it. And then I finally call her. And then the conversation is crazy. First of all.
It's not crazy.
First of all, I don't like to talk on the phone a lot because for a living, entertainment, and I was just
you stay on the phone.
You're on the phone. So when in real life, I don't like to talk a lot. So I call her, and she was at a Christian retreat, which was
Christian Growth Conference, which again, from his background, was like, what is
what in the world? Spirit girl, and she was watching football.
But I was watching football, but when he called, all he said was, may I speak to Fawn? Now, mind you, I wasn't dating anybody. I don't give my number out.
Yeah.
And so when he said it, my response to him was, this must be the second coming. And so this is how our conversations began.
Yes, it is. It's me. I've called you.
I've called you.
You are welcome. You're welcome.
You have been called.
But the call, I mean, because I don't like to speak on the phone a lot or just in general, then the call just kept going and going, but not in a way that I noticed. And so we ended up with that call. How long were we on the phone?
It was 3 hours.
3 hours.
And you still didn't know what she looked like.
Didn't know what she looked like, but she was laughing. It was funny. She was weird. And what she said on the call. Say I was weird? What she said on the call, the first call was, "I'm not having sex with you." And so I'm like,
he was like, well, this call gonna be ended. Well, talk to you later.
All right, sweet girl. Deuces, I'm out.
See you at church Sunday.
And I'm not having sex with you, by the way. So it was just wild. And then at the end of the call, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but she will.
I can tell you exactly what I said.
It was a Jedi mind trick.
It was not.
I'll
say exactly what I said.
What'd you say, Fawn?
We got to the end of it, and I said, I know that this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I know that you've really enjoyed it. However, if you wake up tomorrow morning and you have no desire to call with me, go with that emotion. And so he's like,
Fawn got game. Hold on, that was some game.
Player.
But I told him why.
Why?
Which was it's an answer to my prayer. If you don't feel like calling me tomorrow, go with that. Because my prayer was very simple. I didn't have any desire to date somebody who wasn't my husband. That's a waste of my time. And so if he was not the man that God had called me to be with, I didn't want my time wasted.
Fine, you said go with that emotion.
Go with that emotion. And how long did it take you to call me back?
I think it was what? I don't remember. I don't remember.
It was a minute.
It was like a week or 2 weeks.
No.
It was longer than that?
It was definitely longer than a couple weeks.
Really?
I think so.
I don't think so.
So how long you think it was?
Remember?
I feel like it was several weeks, but I can
No,
it
wasn't.
Weeks?
It was a couple weeks max.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, by the time we talk, and
I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
And we had this phone relationship for some period of time.
And you still never saw her?
No, and then when
so what was taking y'all so long to see each other? Y'all in the same city?
At least on my side, I didn't want to mess it up because I'm like the sweet spirit girl.
It was the same thing. It was the same thing.
Because back in the day, you didn't have swiping, and you would go to the club, and
he would go to the club.
Me, I would go to the club, and then I'd see, and then I'd talk, and then
things happen,
and then what up? Right. So then I was like, this is so good. We're having fun. We enjoy like these conversations, and this is really great. And I didn't want to mess it up by like, I see sweet spirit girl, and then
and I just can't be with somebody ugly for the rest of my life.
I really can't.
That's really what it was.
Lord, it was my vain days. But that was what it was. So I didn't want to mess it up. And then when we agreed to finally see one another,
which was how long?
Was it like a month?
It wasn't. No. It was only a couple weeks. It's
just that
we were talking every single day for hours every day. So it seemed like it was a lot longer.
Yeah.
But we had our first conversation on April 27th, 2003.
My memory's not this good. How long was it? I don't know.
And we met at Fence Creekside in Calabasas on May 9th.
Right. We skip over coffee and lunch. We go straight to dinner.
Yeah.
Which is risky.
Why is that?
That's a test of faith right there.
Keith, break that down. Why?
Well, because a coffee, okay, great. Oh, coffee. Oh, I only drink 1 cup of coffee. Too much caffeine.
If I was ugly, he'd have an exit.
Right, bye.
Yeah.
And then the lunch is like, lunch is only so long. Dinner is like, you go to dinner as an appetizer. And the person goes, do you want dessert? And you're like, please don't ask for dessert. So it could just go. And it's night and whatever. So
he says risky.
And mind you,
he says risky.
It could be risky.
He worked in Hollywood, right? So he's and then also he's got all these women fawning over him, right, at the studio, and it's so for him it's like, okay, we got baseline of where you gonna need to be and how you look. But his mother knew that. His mother
she
knew
didn't describe
that
anything, but it was just great. But then when I see her, it's cliche, but it was love at first sight.
There it is.
No question.
She was actually at the time she was sick, and so. in all the build up to it, I was thinking, oh, she's sick. Should we cancel?
I had a 24-hour flu. And
so I didn't have great expectation of anything. And I see her. She looks better now than she did then. This is beautiful both times throughout. And she had this turtleneck on, and she was so graceful, beautiful, poised, smart, fun, funny, bold, amazing. And so it was easy. And I remember where we sat at that restaurant.
I do too.
The restaurant closed. I don't know why, but it was so great.
Yeah.
And I talked to her mom at the restaurant.
My mother called me, and because she knew I was going on this date, and all I said is, he's not a duck. That was my response to how to
see. You thought I was sweet spirit boy
because she wanted to know how he looked because we'd had such great conversations. And I said, he's not a duck. I was very happy that he. There's a little bit of superficiality going on here, just so we're clear.
Keep it real.
Just so we're clear.
Keep it real.
And I'm like, I'm gonna be with you for the rest of my life. I gotta make sure I want to look at you for the next, for the rest of my life. So
exactly.
But that's how we met. And then he proposed on September 6th, same year. We got married December 27th. The same year. That's what happens when you're not having sex. That timeline.
Yes.
That timeline.
You're not having sex. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Keith, let me ask you: were you marriage minded at the time?
Not really. I mean, I came from a different upbringing, as I mentioned, and so my parents, that relationship ended in divorce. Before the divorce, it was a bunch of drama. And so I just really
point out hair is a problem. Every time I turn to look at him, I'm like, where are my braids? I gotta keep going like.
You think you have braids on?
Some palm.
I'm like, why do I have to keep? I got to adjusting my jacket just to see him.
Well, you bought this jacket thing with this very woolly.
Yeah.
So we digress. But I guess it's because you're crazy. That household, and it was like verbal, like it was just so much stuff. I'm like, you know what? And as a kid growing up in that environment, I thought, I need to be really sure. And if it happens, great. But if it doesn't, also great. I'm not going to compromise. Much like Fawn, I was just fine being just by myself. I could go, I would travel, I'd meet people there.
Everywhere. Let's
come on, like don't put me out there like that. I'm already being I don't need your help with any more of your. But the thing is,
there,
and I'd have fun. I'd come back, and it was just comfortable, and I think that's actually one of the things that caused us to connect even that much more easily because we were already so comfortable in our own skin.
Very comfortable. By
the time we were together, it wasn't like, oh, what are you going to do? It was, there was no expectation.
Y'all can show up authentic.
We were both whole people. We had both done the work on who we were. And so our marriage was not, there wasn't this you complete me. Our marriage wasn't a half plus a half equals a whole. It was a whole times a whole equals a whole. So our marriage started off as a multiplication, not an addition.
Teach. Mm-hmm.
And that was, I think that's probably one of the greatest. Look, this situation.
The hair is all over.
By the time we end this, I'm going to have a clip. My hair's going to be at the top of my head. And and everybody who knows me watching is going to be cracking up because they know I am so simple. I am so simple. I needed like slick back and a bun and a braid and a something.
I could slide it back for you. I can look.
No pomade. No pomade.
No pomade. All right. And so y'all were so settled in y'all's individuality.
Yeah.
What typically can happen is y'all can be so settled in y'all's individuality to where it lacks compromise. How did y'all balance that?
That's without God. Mm-hmm. If that's without God as the covering,
there it is.
There's no way you can do that. The nature of a relationship with God is humility. And so if you are in sort of this triangle where he's up top and the two of you are here, you are under him. Mm-hmm. You don't have the flexibility to not be humble with one another. So some might call it compromise. I look at it less of compromise, and it's just we are incredibly humble with each other. We're very strong-willed, but we're humble with each other. And there's no one in this world who I respect, adore, admire more than this man. And we said that in our conversation, as I said to him, which you've heard me say plenty times, but I said to him, for people who get into these big arguments with their spouses and they have conversations with us trying to understand how is it possible you can both be strong-willed, you're not sweeping things under the rug, you're having true, authentic conversations, but you don't argue. How is that even possible? And what I said to you is when you think about people and they talk about their mentors, they talk about that person, business mentor, whatever mentor, who they respect more than anybody in the world. They would never dare to argue with that person. You can have a frank conversation. That's the nature of that relationship. But you would not argue. You would choose your words in such a way where that person understood that you respected them more than anybody else in the world. Well, that's what I do with him.
You know what's really cool about that is, in thinking about your question, I've never thought about any aspect of what we do as compromise. So it's not like I'm like, oh, wow, this happened and we're doing this. And then therefore I see that as a compromise I'm making. It's just felt like we've decided and we're moving in these directions.
We've decided. And so other than you raising it as part of the framing of the question, I've never thought about any compromise.
I haven't thought it. And it's funny because it reminds me of in our beginning time together. In our beginning, he had never had anybody to live with him, and he's an only child.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's getting used to having someone else in the house, and I'm getting used to sleeping next to someone every night. And so there was this one night early into our marriage, and he's a snorer, and I'm a light sleeper.
I'm with you.
Nobody out there will be able to understand what I'm saying. I have sensitive ears. And so I'm a light sleeper. He's a snorer. And so I literally was getting no sleep. And I got up one morning and I was livid. And he literally had never seen this side of me. I was so furious. And this is where in that one moment that I lost that sight, right? that sight of I respect this man. I was so furious, and I will never forget this moment because he goes, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, as serious as I could possibly be, "I am a woman who lacks sleep,"
which was hysterical. So it was so serious I couldn't laugh then. But on the drive to work, I was like, this is crazy.
And I literally,
and Lord, you're testing me right after.
we're in our first little house, and so I go into the bathroom, and I'm mad because for women,
you didn't say that earlier.
I was like, I can take it, and I just lost it. I was so tired. I had been up the whole night with him snoring. I could not sleep. And for women, y'all can sleep for a few hours, get up, look the same. That's not our reality. We actually need the sleep. And
so beauty rest is
a real thing. And so I'm like, this man is messing with my beauty at this moment. So I went into the bathroom. I was so upset. And I will never forget this conversation. I'm so grateful it was early on in our marriage. The Lord said to me, I was so angry. I said, "Why can you not make him stop snoring?" And God said to me, "Why does it matter?" I was like, "Why does it matter? You said you would give your beloved rest. Am I not your beloved?" Like, this is a real conversation, by the way. This is a real, he gave him rest. He gave him rest. And I'm literally having this conversation saying, you said you would give your beloved rest. I am your beloved. And he said, but you're asking me the wrong thing. Why are you focused on him? I said, because he's the one snoring. This is a real conversation. And God said to me, but what you want is rest, right? I said, yes. And he said, then why what he's doing
Why does that matter to you? Why is your prayer not that you will not hear his snoring? In that moment, it changed how I looked at everything, because God wasn't wrong. What I was trying to get was sleep. It didn't matter that he was snoring if God gave me the ability to sleep through his snore.
You better teach.
So that has been our principle from that moment forward. That's how I've looked at everything. When he does something that I don't necessarily like, my conversation with the Lord is not change him.
So that's a commercial for Max Wax earplugs. We do not own
Max,
any.
That's Max. So that was the solution. Max silicone earplugs. I've been sleeping with them So I was willing to have argument, like go and be mad at him when the solution was at CVS.
God, that's good. God, that's good. God. And that was in the first year of your marriage?
That was right at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
That because I could only take it for so long.
So what did you say to him? Did you actually come to him and say, hey,
I apologized for, I said, listen, you're not doing this on purpose. You can't control what you're doing when you're sleeping. You're not trying
to annoy me.
And my response was inappropriate. And the one thing that we've always done, is when one of us are in the wrong, we apologize, and we apologize with a quickness. We don't have this presumption that we'll be here tomorrow. That's foolish.
Right.
You hold on, because you're about to talk about so I watched the TED Talk that you did 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. And what was the title of it? How not to have an
argument-free marriage.
Argument-free marriage.
Yeah.
And at first, when I looked at the title, I was like, this is just some pie in the sky theory. That doesn't make any sense in the world until you started unpacking it in the talk. And I said, this is achievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
What made you even think like that? What stage of your marriage were y'all been married for 21 years? So you did that 9 years ago. When did that ideology first creep in? Was it that moment?
At the very beginning.
At the very beginning.
So.
Because I was certain that he was the person that God placed in my life. And if we just look at it just from a biblical perspective, arguing, not biblical. Not with your spouse. And people can be mad, and all the counselors can say, well, you have to be mad. Jesus got mad. Y'all, he flipped over some tables at a temple. This is not the same. We keep trying to equate. Well, he was, he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he was praying to a place where literally his sweat turned into blood. Y'all, he was about to be crucified. My husband snoring is not the same thing. We keep trying to equate. Lazarus died, and he shows up, and he has tears, and he cries because Lazarus. I was like, y'all, somebody was dead. Could we stop trying to equate? You forgot to put down the toilet seat with Lazarus died. The response should not be equivalent. And so I think from the very beginning, I was so clear because I've prayed this prayer. This has been my prayer. I call it my box me in prayer. But my prayer has been very simple from the time I was about 21 years old. Lord, if this is the door you want me to walk through, open it in such a way that no man can close, including myself, because humans are real good at sabotage.
Yes.
Especially Christians.
Yes.
God bless us.
Yes.
The other part of that prayer is, if this is not your will, close the door in such a manner that no man can open, including me.
Right.
Which meant that when he called me back and we began this journey together, the Lord didn't close that door. So I knew without question, he was my husband. The number of people, especially women, who would not pray that prayer while they're dating somebody that they like. So now you're going to spend the next 4 years, 5 years wasted on this person, trying to get this person to become the person for you when they're not the person for you. And so that prayer, literally, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that this is the man that God, this is, I'm his rib. I knew that
from the very beginning. And so the way that I treated him, the way that I cherish him, the way that I respect him, that is biblical. That was never a question for me. But let's be clear, this whole nonsense of submission being taken out of context, right. I'm an incredibly strong-willed woman.
I can't tell that.
I was going to say.
It's hard for me to imagine.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine you not strong-willed.
But this is what I don't have an issue doing that I think that a lot of women have a challenge, especially African-American women, Black women, is he comes into a room and you will visibly see me melt. I have no issue doting over this person who has given me their life. Nobody else in the room has committed their life to me. No one else. One person. And so for me to hold back how much I love him, desire him, care for him for the sake of other people, to dumb it down for society when he's the only one who has committed till death do us part? No, you don't get that. And so for me, that is just a part of who we are. I literally, somebody says, Keith, people tell me this all the time. I'll be literally in a business press interview, and I do them all the time. And someone will say, Keith, and it's like, it's
visibly noticeable.
It is visibly noticeable. I have been told on quite a few occasions that the moment I was talking to an investor one time, and literally we're in a business meeting and we're having this conversation. We're talking. And probably about an hour into it, he says to me, do you realize how many times you talk about your husband in every... And I said, really? And he's like, yeah, like every example.
Every example.
I think this is what I discovered when I traveled the world. So my first New York Times bestselling book was Happy Wives Club.
Yes.
And I traveled the world interviewing couples happily married 25 years or more to deduce the common denominator. What I discovered with every single one of those women, they were all high-powered women, which I thought, okay, this is interesting, because that's when that book, Women Want Love, Men Want Respect, was really, and the whole Proverbs 31 wife had been somehow...
I know what you got to say. Go ahead.
Somehow, the Proverbs 31 wife went from being a successful businesswoman, which she is, from having servants, which she did, from making her husband so respected in their area, their community, because of how successful she was. Somehow we turned the Proverbs 31 woman into a stay-at-home wife. I don't know how we support that notion.
Not reading
that. I'm like, what part of Proverbs 31 was she a stay-at-home? Like,
I read that a couple years ago in 2020. I read it with new eyes, and I said, "This." Well, it shocked me, because back in those days, it basically made me unlearn and relearn some stuff.
Exactly.
Because back in those days, women weren't, we were taught they weren't business women.
Right.
And so I was like, hold on, this is messing up my whole ideology. Like, how in the world was she so powerful? She was working and she stayed up that night, make sure that the lamps didn't run out of oil. She's dressing her kids with fine linen and all. How is she able to do this? But
she had servants. Because we think we are supposed to do it all. And it's like, no, she didn't have a servants. So she worked, but then she made sure she had the help that she focused on what was most important. So when I look at just being a wife, being a Proverbs 31 wife, when I went and traveled and I met all of these wives, what I discovered about every single one of them, they were strong. They were powerful. And it was so jarring for me because of what we're taught in America, especially what we're taught in the church. I actually asked him to come with me on, where did you go with me? Uruguay and Argentina, right?
I sure did.
Because I said, this is crazy. I had been to all these countries. And I'm like, every woman is incredibly strong. I expected to see women more demure.
Yeah. Very mindful.
Very mindful. Very mindful. Yes. That's what I expected based on what I had been taught in the church.
Yeah.
And then I'm going around the world and I'm like, wait a minute. But what I noticed, because I would interview the couples, and how I found these couples wasn't like some internet thing. I would reach into someone who I knew in another country.
Okay.
And I'd say, point me to the couple that everyone wants their marriage, including their children. Because what you can do externally, you can't do that in your house. If your kids want your marriage,
yes,
that's what I was looking for. And so that's how I got to all these different couples. And so I knew that they were the real thing. And so once I looked at the dynamics of each one, I said, wait a minute, all these women are incredibly strong, but when their husbands walk through the room, they melt. Every single one. You would see them visibly. There was one woman, she's like the top plastic surgeon in Argentina. You know, they do a lot of plastic. And she is a top plastic surgeon. Her husband was a judge. And they talk about how they built from nothing, how they literally had pennies when they were in college together, and how they built. But when he would talk about her, he would go on and on and on about her achievements and how proud he was of her. And she would do the same thing. And so I realized pretty early into our marriage and doing that process that I didn't need to not be a strong woman. I just needed to know how to balance the art of being a strong woman and still doting over my husband.
Fine. You just blessed the people of God right now. When I say you freed some people, because that's the reality. They have this ideology that you have to lose this in order to become this. Right. You can be both.
You could be both.
And the way you just broke that down is so real, because a lot of times we be like, see, these black women, they just too strong for their own good. But the reality is, and then a woman will say, well, if you're a strong enough man, you can handle me. Instead of saying, no, the onus is on you. Yeah. If you're a strong woman, learn how to acquiesce to his masculine energy and vice versa. The Bible says, submit ye one to another. Yes. And so he can't be a man that's trying to rule over you or lord over you in a way. He has to be able to receive your strength and not see it as something that's lessening his masculinity.
Insecure.
And so talk about that, Keith. How did you find yourself secure with a woman like Fawn?
Well, first of all, I'm attracted to strong women.
There it is.
So that's number one. And being a whole person and being secure, it isn't that strength makes me less than. It's strength, and it shifts. The dynamic is just that. It's dynamic because it's not exerting power. And I think the paradigm that people have that you speak of is there's a thought that to be strong, I need to be strong at your expense. And so therefore you need to be less than relative to me in my position. And actually not true. She could be strong if you're comfortable. If you've got it, you got it.
There it is.
If you got it, you got it.
Say it again, Keith. If you got it, you got it.
If I have incredible basketball ability, if I'm Wembanyama, I don't need to trip off of what. Like I'm sitting here. If I could sing like Beyonce. Okay, why do I need to trip off of a sing? Like you just are good, right? Yeah. In business, if I'm Warren Buffett. Hey, I know finance. I know I don't have to prove anything, until it's the time, place, and for me just to do my thing. So I think that's where people get tripped up. It's in things that have been shaped and formed and really bastardized by society.
There it is.
That cause you to try to play a role that's not authentic to who you are anyway. That's why it presents conflict.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Fawn, which is interesting because your upbringing been the type that seemed to challenge authority. How in the world did you become this? Like, if you look at a young girl that literally was, before emancipation was a thing, you were emancipated at the age of 15. How in the world did you go from being this young girl that would challenge authority to being submitted in this way in marriage?
I still challenge authority.
Oh yes, she does.
So here's the thing: is I never had an issue with. I mean, I left home at 15 to never do drugs. I wasn't in the club. I wanted to. What I required was an understanding of what you were asking from me. I needed to know the why. And my parents, and I think this is the case with most Black parents, now we're trying gentle parenting. I love the gentle parenting. I had parents who bought from the Christian bookstore a huge, thick wood paddle that had the scripture on it, spare the rod, spoil the child. And that's what hit my butt on a very regular basis. But my thing is I didn't have an issue with authority. I just didn't trust your authority if you couldn't explain why you needed me to do this or that. So you want me to go to church and you want me to spend 8 hours on a Sunday in a Southern Baptist church. Why? Why can the message not be in 45 minutes, right? Why do we need to go to Sunday school and then have church, then have lunch in the basement after church, then come back for the right hand of fellowship, in which almost nobody is new? So y'all are literally just shaking each other's hands as the right hand of fellowship. So I needed to understand why we couldn't wear pants, because our pastor believed that women shouldn't wear anything pertaining to men, and men shouldn't wear anything pertaining to women. So however that became, women couldn't. So I'm young, it's cold, my legs are cold. Like I need to understand the why. And so I was that child who challenged, but if I bought into it, I'm really a rule abiding person. I live my life by rules. And so all you have to do, if I buy into it. So what people know about me is if you want to give me advice, you better tie it back to a scripture. No, seriously, you better tie it. And by the way, you better know the Greek. Don't come to me with a translation that you came back up. But everybody knows, my family knows, my friends know, if you want to change my opinion about something, tie it to a scripture, but you better know that scripture, because I'm going to break it down till there's nothing left to do. So for me, this actually isn't a challenge, because I'm humbled under God. This isn't like, Young Thug's truly humble under God. Like, I'm literally, sorry. Still too soon. I truly am humbled under God. As a matter of fact, we're all thugs. Yeah, truly humbled under God. That's not even. Let's not have a Young Thug come after us. Okay.
But so I'm talking about at 15. So people see you as this mogul now. So at 15, what led? I know your parents had a child, and they said, "Hey, we don't want you being a negative influence on this child." Right. Child. Yeah. So either you're going to ship up or ship out. Yeah. And you said, "Well, I'm going to go." So why can you say, "Oh, I'm gonna try to do right"?
Because I didn't buy into it. I didn't buy into it. And my parents, my father's now passed away, but my mother would tell you, I tell her, we were their pastor's guinea pigs. Like the way that every single time there was an instruction on what your children should do, all of a sudden we had to line up with that instruction, but the instruction wasn't biblical. And I was that kid who, I'll give you, this is a pretty good example of just how I was as a kid, is I refused to read novels. It's made up. There's all these nonfiction books that we could be reading and doing reports on. Why am I reading Judy Blume? And so I would challenge them, like, fake detectives and fake, like, what? So I had the Encyclopedia Britannica, and we would be given novels, and I would literally sit reading the encyclopedia. I loved it. I loved it.
Do the assignment.
I would do my own assignment based on something that was in the encyclopedia, and I would turn it in. I had a teacher. It's ridiculous. I mean, and God bless my parents and my teachers for dealing with this. I had a teacher who told my mother that my handwriting was sloppy, that I was not taking my time with my handwriting. And so I wrote my next paper with and I mean, when I tell you my handwriting was perfection,
but she needed a magnifying glass to read.
She's trouble. She's trouble.
I wrote the letters so small. And my mother, she says to me, she said, she can't read this. I said, that wasn't the instruction. The instruction was for my handwriting to be. So that was, I was that child.
How old were you when you were this petty?
I had to been 9. I had to been.
Probably started before then, though.
But it was just, and it wasn't that I didn't respect authority. I needed you to explain to me why you had the authority.
Ooh.
So if we go back to your question of why did God set up the marriage the way that he did and the family the way that he did, I don't question God's authority.
Oh, that's good.
So being able to fall in line with where he has instructed me to fall in line has never been an issue for me because I'm humbled under God.
But at 15, you were brave enough to walk out your parents' door
and go to Jordan Downs, Watts, California, lived in the projects.
What were you thinking? Like, what? How is your brain? Because I'm the wonder how you think, how you process information. Because you have to be fearless in all the stuff that you've accomplished. But the reality, at 15 years old, a young girl in California, Watts, especially back in those days, where gang violence was at an all-time high. You said, I'm about to walk out and go make a life for myself.
I wanted freedom. The same thing I require in my life now. And I did not have that at home. I wanted the freedom. Funny enough, when I look back at it, I wanted the freedom to be who God called me to be. That's what I wanted. I could feel that there was a person that was inside of me that was strong, that was authentic. In the church, at least, I don't know what it is now with Baptist churches, but at that time, everybody had a dual life. Everyone had a dual life. And I refused to have a dual life. So my sister, and we laugh about it now, my sister would like climb out the windows to go out. I'd walk out the front door. Why would I go through a window and there's literally a door that I can just walk through? So this is how I got in trouble. It's because I refused to fall in. So they would sneak around and do what I was doing in real life.
Yeah.
The only difference is I refused to sneak. And so that authenticity, I was requiring people to accept me as me. All the way back then. Now that is celebrated. But at that time, that wasn't celebrated. You had to have a dual life. You had your Christian life. You had like, that's just the way that it was. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be who I am. And that's who I am even now as a CEO, as a leader, as a wife, as a friend, you're going to get the same Fawn Yvette Weaver on every single day of the week, no matter what situation I'm in.
I saw a post you made the other day of y'all dancing. You said, I know some of y'all think CEOs shouldn't dance or whatever. And I love it. It's like, no, I get to, I have the ability to make my life what I want to be. And if y'all want to be fake about and all that, then y'all can be that. And that's why I create this whole platform. I said, I am going to be authentic. I'm going to let y'all know my struggles. I'm going to let y'all know my idiosyncrasies. Y'all going to truly know who I am. My village will rally behind me. Those that don't like it, then go kick rocks. But the reality is, it's going to be me.
It's going to be me.
Keith, who were you growing up?
Ooh, wow. Growing up, I was entrepreneurial all the time.
What was your first business?
So my first real business was I was selling fruit on a stick.
Fruit on a stick.
So my mom had these
It was
salons,
big business.
And I was a cute little chunky kid. So I would sell the fruit on the stick. And I'd sell sodas out of the little cooler. And then my voice got deep early. So then I started leasing soda machines.
Don't skip over this. Just because this is his person.
I'm going to tell you talk about how I'm hood. So I would lease a Coca-Cola machine. And
how old were you?
I was well underage. I was probably 14, 12, something like that.
So he convinced the Coca. I thought it was Pepsi.
No, it was Coca-Cola.
So he convinced Coca-Cola, the leasing people, to lease him. Sorry, Atlanta. To lease him the machine to put at his mother's salon.
Oh, really?
But the margins weren't big enough. So I needed to get bigger margins. So when you push
margins.
Coca-Cola, you would get cola, Springfield Cola, because I could get those for 15 cents. So that was the first one. And then I had that going. And then when there were complaints, I would just say, oh, wow, it's cold. And
you said the margins weren't big enough?
The margins weren't big enough. And then I rolled that into car detailing. So detail your car, get the rims real good. I had a mobile detailing business, but it started at the salon and then I saved up for my car. So it's always been a hustle.
That's good.
A hustle. So I got it, honestly, both my parents.
But how'd you get them to lease you a machine?
My voice was deep. I was always smart. I would call people and they give me the forms. Nobody would verify anything. I was shady. I was shady. And then I just kept pushing. But I was always just very driven. I knew I'd be successful when I was a kid.
You did?
Very much so.
Did your parents instill entrepreneurship?
Very much so. Both of them entrepreneurs. I was smiling because my dad was a hustler.
I was about to say, what was your daddy entrepreneur?
It wasn't always lawful, but there was a hustle going. It was a hustle going on. There was always a legitimate business, and then some other stuff going on. But that's where I got it. It's just drive, and because it was in me to be successful, and it was something that I understood and desired, I just kept pushing from early days to adulthood and just never stopped. So I've always had multiple jobs. I've never not worked from the time I was 10 years old. Really?
Really?
I've had a 2-week break, which even then I was selling real estate. So I closed a deal during the 2 weeks that I was. So it's
how old were you doing real estate?
So I was a real estate broker in my 20s.
A broker?
Yes, commercial.
I know. Because why not?
Because everybody's selling a house, so you can sell buildings. You get there faster, get richer faster.
Wider margins again.
Wider margins. So that was it. So it's kind of perfect that we ended up meeting one another and both being sort of naturally bred entrepreneurs. And I think that through that and through the different upbringings, which there's commonality in that there were things forced upon or attempted to be forced upon Fawn. For me, it was a little bit different. There was just this disruption that made me uncomfortable that I needed to break out of. But all of that has resulted in this toughness, this mental toughness that we both have with her. Obviously, you hear and see. For me, different because it's packaged in this very affable, kind of goofy at times exterior. But there is this strength and resolve and resilience and persistence combined that pushes us forward. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why, in meeting one another, we've been so successful, both individually, collectively, in business. It's a super power.
Oh, so we're so different. He's so brilliant, but he doesn't mind people underestimating him at all. I really don't. I don't either. But we have a completely different approach to it. We were talking about it this morning actually because his style. So someone said he's negotiating a deal, and someone sent him a text this morning and said, by the way, your wife shares in her book, Love and Whiskey, your wife shares your negotiating skill on page 236. So we know what you're doing.
Like, oh, man. I need to change it up. I have a whole Columbo thing under there. Oh gosh, it's harder to do now with two successfuls. People come on, we're on to you.
Nobody's buying the Columbo bit at this point, so it's no big deal that it's in the book.
I do my aw shucks thing. I'm like, oh no.
No one is buying aw shucks anymore. But this is what I'll say, and I think especially when it comes to African American couples, that I think is confuses people. Keith was an executive vice president for Sony Pictures by the time he left. He left after being there for 21 years.
21 years?
21 years. There were, how many CEOs did you outlive?
21 years.
4. He ended up being right hand for like every single one, but his role was overseeing global public policy and external affairs. So he wasn't Exactly. So when it came to Sony Pictures, he is the person who's doing all the negotiations with the heads of states around the world in 170 countries. This is a bad boy, but he has no issue at all when people come up to him and they're talking about me and it's Fawn. But he knows who he is.
He said it a minute ago.
She did the same thing. In the early parts of our marriage, it was funny because we really weren't that different from how we are now. And people go, oh my gosh, Hollywood, this and that, and celebrities, and I saw you on the red carpet, da-da-da. And they go, oh.
And people wanted him to be a senator. He had people were laying out a whole campaign if he would accept it.
But they would see her and like, oh, what do you do? Oh. And she's like, chill. I'm just so now it's the same. So people are like, oh gosh, got to fall. I'm like, I know. I married her. I understand.
I know what I got. I know what I got.
What do you do? I'm like, I'm here, chilling.
I'm gonna grab her coat. I'm gonna grab her coat for her.
But this is the part that I think is really important. Is that when he left this very high-powered, high-paying job to come work for me, and it was so, for me, very odd, because when people would talk to him about different things, I'm like, we work with each other. He's like, no, don't let her tell you that. I work for her. And I didn't understand.
It's true. It's true. Why am I going to pretend like I don't? There's a CEO. I'm not the CEO. I'm confident.
But for me, I had to adjust to that because
in the home you don't. Yeah.
Because at home that's not we don't have that structure, right? And so his ability to go from being in this high-powered role to supporting this business, so people don't understand, and I think that this is why that Ebony speech that you showed earlier, why that touched so many people in that room. There were so many celebrities who came up to us or came up to me because he literally, I did the speech. He had a flight. That event was running really late and he had a flight he was going to miss. So the moment I got off the stage, he had to jet out. And so many people came up to me afterwards, celebrities, and they're like, we need to figure out how to do that, how to get that, how to gain that. And I really do believe that it comes down to two things. And of course, our foundation is Christ. So we got to start there, because if you pull that out, this doesn't exist. Teach. So we start there. But when you look at things beyond that, I'd say that there are probably two major things. The first is something he taught me early in our marriage, which was presume innocence. Presume innocence. Presume that what if I say something the wrong way, if I do something that hurts your feelings, it wasn't intentional. When we came in yesterday to the airport, we're at DFW, and there's this older couple that was in, I don't know if you caught this.
I did.
Okay. And the guy is sitting on the bench. He went to sit down and he had a bag right next to him. And the wife wanted to sit down and she's like, I want to sit there. Can you move the bag? And so he's moving the bag. And while she's doing that, she accidentally hits his foot with her roller bag, and he like yelled at her, and she's like, well, I didn't do it on purpose. And I think that that's the piece that we get wrong a lot, that most arguments, if people really dive into what they're arguing about, it's so little, it's so petty, it's so small in the grand scheme of we're going to be together for the rest of our lives.
Or it's built up over time.
Yep.
Which is, it's not related to the very thing you're discussing or intense fellowship about or arguing over. It's like, oh, that was built over this. I didn't say anything. That was from 2 weeks ago. That was from 2 years ago. And one of our commitments is, no matter how uncomfortable, we have the discussion in the day.
In the day.
So whatever we're talking about is what we're talking about, not
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, and then she runs over my foot, and then I'm like, oh gosh, well, you always do this. And so it's just so much compounding that happens that people, sort of let explode at times.
What spoke to me so deeply was the fact of, you said, no, the org chart, you're the CEO. I do work under you.
It's factual.
It's factual, but it's the heart posture of Jesus. How would Jesus wash his disciples' feet? Yeah. When you know your authority, when you know your position, you can acquiesce and say, babe, you got this. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got to worry about I don't want, because a lot of times people are trying to demand respect where you just have to be a person that people respect. You don't have to demand it from somebody. And sometimes we get so caught up in titles thinking that the title automatically accompanies respect. You know what I'm saying? But if you respect yourself like he does and be like, babe, I've been in this position before. I ain't trying to earn. And the truth be told, he doesn't have to earn it from you. You've already given it to him.
Without question. And we're instructed to do everything that we do as unto the Lord.
That part.
So then for him, he's not looking for praise for other people. That's not where he's looking for. He is looking for praise from God. And God is real clear in how he should treat me as his wife. He is to love me as Christ loved the church. What greater love is there than to lay down your life for someone else? So if he is to love me as Christ loved the church, that means that he really is putting me above all things, including himself.
When I say I need people to understand this, I need them to overstand that, because most marriages go through the greatest division because they begin to compete with their partner. Like, how do you compete with your partner? It's the craziest thing ever. I was watching this video. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I was watching this video about how Shaq and Kobe Bryant, they were just at odds with each other. You got two great players, and they was just at odds with each other the whole time. Like, y'all on the same team. And they just kept, you have these great players losing, and they're great individually, but collectively, they kept competing with one another. And it's so unfortunate that most marriages end because of that level of competition. My goal, I said 2025, my personal mantra for this podcast is amplify in 2025. And what I want to amplify is love. I want to decrease divorce statistics in, as a whole, but especially in our culture. And I want marriage rates to increase. And I want us to have the tools and the resources so we can have healthier marriages that are long lasting. And so I told y'all that I had y'all on here for purpose. And I never shared with y'all that purpose, but that is the purpose. I wanted to launch, and I just thank God so much that January the 1st, today, my episodes always drop on Wednesdays. And so for Wednesday to be our launch days for the Dear Future Wifey podcast, I was like, I need you, Fawn. I mean, she said, I got to talk to my husband. I'll see what he says. I was just waiting with bated breath. Like, please text me and say that he's in. She said, he's in. I said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Because I needed y'all to be the anchor for 2025, because this vision that I had of what I want to put out here in the universe and what I want people to receive. And when I say I love the heart posture that y'all have for one another, the know that. And so Keith, your family used to own a bank? What's y'all background? What was y'all background?
No.
What they have?
We did not have a bank.
What y'all have?
We had a beauty salon for a while. My dad had various car businesses and sold cars, sold other things.
But that was the bank.
He's dead now, so I guess I can say. But no, they came from very humble beginnings. My dad came from East Texas, from Lufkin, Nacogdoches. Ended up in LA and met my mom, and had me, and I have a stepbrother who is incapacitated, but that was upbringing, and they were both, like I said, entrepreneurially driven.
They hustled.
And then kept growing and ended up from South LA to Baldwin Hills. And by the time they divorced, so they just kept moving up. Unfortunately, because of just not having the tools to understand how to connect. My father, I just learned this because he just died last month.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. I learned that my grandfather had 7 wives. It's not even clear that they were at different time periods, even though that was here in Texas. And I was like, oh, wow, I used to think he didn't get it. And I'm like, wow, he may have thought he was doing that much better than his father with my mother and all these other women, because there were lots of them.
Yeah. Papa was a Rolling Stone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I had a car detail. I would detail the women's car. I had no idea I was detailing all of my father's girlfriend's car. Yeah. But that's really where it was. It wasn't like the peak of financial success by any means, but they did okay by the end.
They did well. They moved the ball with Hills.
But no bank. So I think that may have come from, we own a number of things now, and the progression, and one of them is a significant amount of real estate holdings where we have some pretty high profile tenants. One of them is U.S. Bank.
Right. And y'all own that.
So we bought the U.S. Bank building. And it was, I did a post on it and I was very clear. The first line says, so we bought a bank. But everything else was about, this is about real estate. And explained that we bought the U.S. Bank building, but then they were going to turn around and lease from us. And so the lesson was on that. But it's interesting because as he was talking about it, and as I was listening to what you were saying earlier in your desire for divorce rates, and it made me think of two things. One thing is we have a whole lot of conversations about this wealth gap.
Yep.
And everyone wants it to be government.
Oh, this is good.
This is good. On. I already know where you're going, because that's a part of my 2025.
So people forget that Asians in America were in cages. We put them in cages, and we took everything from them. If you don't know why they were in cages, go do your history. But they had internment camps here in America. How is it possible that there is no wealth gap between them and white people, even though they went through that and we took everything? And by the way, we didn't give it back.
Yep.
And so how is it that we continue to have our wealth gap expand? Look at their divorce rates and look at ours.
Yep.
Napoleon Hill, who was a journalist, and he wrote some really popular books, but that's not where I usually focus on. Napoleon Hill was a journalist that Andrew Carnegie hired to give access to every millionaire and wealthy American and successful American at the around the top of the 19th century, 20th century, sorry. Yeah. And he interviewed, by the end of it, 500 of America's most successful people. And what Napoleon Hill deduced as the most important thing that determines if a person will succeed or fail in life and business is the life partner they choose.
Yep.
Who they marry has such a determining factor. But here's the issue with us as African Americans, as Black Americans in this country. We cannot deal with the wealth gap if we keep divorcing, because the nature or not getting married at all.
Yep.
Because you're building this wealth together. Most wealth in this country has always happened through real estate. Yep. I don't care what American Titan, if you go back and you study, it don't matter if it's Rockefeller, if it's Carnegie, if it's Schwab, if it's JP Morgan, you look at their real estate portfolio, and that's what continued to roll forward. Well, we keep splitting up the houses. So you put all of your money into a house, that gets divided. You're now in apartments, or you're leasing somebody. You have to start over. So as African Americans, our community, we start over every single time there is a divorce, or a breakup. But this is the issue. When we talk about white parents and the difference and why this gap is happening, they're passing down real estate. They stayed together, so they had an inheritance. How many Black families are leaving inheritances?
I know I ain't getting none. I took my parents, boy. I'm telling you, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's so real. And that's the reason why I love the first thing that you did with Uncle Nearest, which they was like, how crazy can you be? Take this $50 million and go put it in marketing. And you said, no, this will be the marketing. We finna go buy the land. We finna go buy the distiller. What made you do that, though?
I understand that how we decrease the wealth gap are two things. One, making sure the next generation is not starting from scratch. We have done that every single generation, even when the generations before us have had the ability, had the resources to save. When my father passed away, if he had done things the way that I now know that he wished he had.
Yeah.
But if he had, then he would have left an inheritance. Instead, we helped to take care of our mother.
Yep.
That is not something that should be happening. But he was a part of a generation that could have actually changed that. He could have left a significant inheritance, and that's across the board. And so at some point, one of our generations are going to have to say, okay, we're going to be the generation that kills this wealth gap because we're going to sacrifice in our generation what we could have. The houses, the cars, the gifts. We just went through Christmas time. We don't exchange gifts. His birthday is December 24th. Our anniversary is December 27th.
He had a birthday?
He did.
Yeah.
He's
Happy
a Christmas
birthday.
Eve baby. And we literally exchange cards. Why? Because if we have money to put in something, it is going to be something that appreciates, not depreciates.
Teach.
And so for us...
Hold on, have y'all always been like that though? When y'all were dating, were you expecting nice gifts and all that?
My very first was a very extravagant gift for Fawn, for our first gift that I presented to her, or my first gift to her. It was a Tim Duncan bobblehead. And I think it was
I'm
free.
Go Spurs Go. I'm Go Spurs Go all day long.
Gift.
Yeah.
So I think it was.
Yeah,
I think it was
we're big Spurs fans.
It was $12.
It was $12.
So yes, the answer is yes. We've always been
but I will say he did try to get me. Well, I considered it extravagant.
Right.
So for Christmas, I think it was at Christmas time, he gave me this watch. And when I'm opening up the box, it was, and I didn't know a whole lot about watches, so I don't know, but I'm opening it and there's like a box within a box within a box. And by the time we had gotten to the watch, I had already determined I was going to have him return it, which I did. Because
so ridiculous. It's not like we couldn't afford it. But
it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Were y'all married at that time?
We weren't. We got married a few days later. But
So you made him return it?
I did.
Well, how did you feel about that, Keith?
I felt a way about it.
Because he's a watch guy.
And then I was like, and I'm like, oh, that's, and I checked because I didn't just buy something out of the blue.
What kind of watch was it?
So it wasn't even that fancy. It was an Omega Constellation Series watch, and it was diamonds all around. I mean, so it was, you know.
And so
it was unnecessary.
So why'd you make him return it?
Because it was unnecessary and it wasn't going to go up in value.
Well, that's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. However, point taken.
So you don't like stuff like that at all? You don't wear jewelry?
You do wear jewelry. I mean, look at this ring.
This is my total. Okay, so let's be clear. So I have two pairs of earrings that I have had for the last 21 years. So we've now been married 21 years. I have two pairs. I have this and I have a small pair of studs.
And you let me buy the watch for you eventually because that's what you're wearing now.
So eventually.
So why?
But by the time we got this, we were at a very different position in life.
Yeah, clearly.
So it's all about timing and seasons. And in that season, I did not believe that he should be purchasing something for me at that cost.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What is your love language?
Physical touch.
And what's yours, Keith?
Words of affirmation.
Yeah. And so, and when you bought her that gift, what were you trying to say? Was it that?
I'm so glad you asked that because she is so right in the timing and the season. And in that season, what I was trying to do, I was really not purposefully, but I was taking worldly influences and putting them into our relationship.
Yeah.
I was trying to compare how I showed up in the context of our relationship by demonstrating what I could do.
There it is.
And there was a element that I could show. I was really thinking about her family and her upbringing and how compared to mine.
He tried to buy me a Porsche. No, seriously.
You talking about early on? When y'all were dating?
Yeah. Were we dating or were we just married?
We were married.
We were just
married. I'm not trying to buy
but we were just married. Like we were just married, and he was trying to buy me a Porsche and this watch, which we eventually got. Although the one you did had bigger diamonds. It was a lot different. I picked this one. This is a much chill version of
what he had at first.
And I literally have one watch. I have one watch. I have one ring. I have this pair of earrings, one other pair of earrings.
You don't care about none of that stuff.
I really don't.
But I think it's just what it did for me, even though at the time I felt away, like I mentioned, is it allowed me to unlearn things and not feel so influenced and not be so influenced by things that are happening, things I think I should do. I should buy her a Porsche. I have it like that. I could do that.
Yep.
And I think that allowed us to really fly. And as it relates to, in relationships, but not having those expectations, number one, being able to wear things very loosely. I think in business, especially because we're entrepreneurs, understanding, wow, we have homes, plural, and we have assets. And yes, we have nice things, but not being tied into them.
Yeah.
We know we can shed anything pretty easily, and it's not a thing for either of us now.
And what it did do is he stopped trying to buy me gifts, but we began buying more real estate. So that same amount of money for the car, for the watch, for all that became our next house. We bought a new piece of property every single year for the first 8 years.
Sometimes more than one.
But mostly because I don't know how it is everywhere. I think it's still this way, where single family residents, you could have a fourplex, right? So it's rental, but it's in terms of the loan, it's still single family, right? And so when we met, he had a fourplex. Then he bought the fourplex next door. We were married when we bought the fourplex next door, right? You had the one that we were in. We bought the one next to us. Then we bought a house down the street. Then we bought another. But what we were doing is every year we were moving because it's owner occupied residency. That's how we built the portfolio.
That's smart.
And so we weren't paying for second homes. Yep. Every single home was owner occupied. And then once we got to the time frame that was required, we then went and we bought another property. And so that's how we built our real estate portfolio. But we wouldn't have been doing that if I was blinged out. Hello. And by the way, this was 20th anniversary, and it's still not like big like the rings that are out there, but this was 20th anniversary. Up until this point, I wore a plain band. Drove him nuts.
And I understand. So from a man's standpoint, I'm gonna take Keith's side real quick.
Thank you, brother.
I got you, brother. See, as a man, you got to think about the psychology that's on men. First of all, they tell us that we have to the wedding ring has to be 3 times our salary.
Right.
Like where do we get that?
Nonsense?
They say whoever they is.
Y'all should stop listening to they. Because they don't have the house. We eloped. How much was our wedding?
It was $200, something like that. But let him finish his story.
So I'm gonna unpack this. I gotta help heal my boy Keith from the past trauma that was caused by society. So what happens
I'm gonna lay out on the sofa.
Yeah, so lay on the yellow couch. And what happens is they tell us this, and so the Bible says a wife is a crown upon her husband's head, right? And so the reality is we gotta quote unquote make sure that she is blinged out so that when other men see her, they be like, oh, he must love you. They judge a man's love for his woman based upon the countenance of what she has on or the outward appearance. So she has a nice ring on. They like, oh, he really love you. Your homegirls say that. Show me your ring. Ooh, he love you. They say that. Yes, we need to change who the days are.
We got to change the they.
But they say that.
Yeah.
And so for him to buy you a Porsche, he wants his woman to be, driving a nice car. He wants you to look like you're being well taken care of. People can't see the real estate portfolio. They can't see that. They see that car you get out of. They see the diamond earrings. They see the nice watch. They see the ring on your finger. And so from a man, call it ego, call it whatever you want to call it. But the reality is it makes us feel like, yeah, I got my woman looking good. And he's doing it with well intentions. But the reality is he wants your friends and family and other people that are strangers to look like you're well taken care of.
But what he don't want is peace.
Well,
no. What is the number one reason for arguments?
You're gonna say finances.
Finances. So you are exchanging peace in your household for what they say.
Well, typically, I'm gonna tell you this now. Some of your women counterparts, they go along with that narrative too, because all on social media they are saying that they want the Louis, the Gucci, the all that designer stuff. They want a man. You see, for Christmas they'll have all these purses and bags and all this stuff that they man done bought them $50,000 worth of purses. Well, that wouldn't work with Fawn. Fawn be like, why did you just do that? You'll get mad and say, take it all back.
Well, and let me just say this. On the ring, just in my defense, because I talk about all this learning and progress and all that. The reason I had an issue with the ring, the previous ring, is that it was not just a band. It was the most janky band. I was like, it looks like it's out of Cracker Jack. It's not like, I was expecting to be a big old rock on there. It was I think it was less than $100.
Yeah.
So it was
so far. Why?
It was so extra
because he can afford it.
I care about peace.
Yes,
He can afford it though. He's working really. He has a high paying job, and he says, "Hey, I just want to get you a nice ring that you'll have for the rest of your life."
I look at so many women look up to me. So many women look up to me, and my hope is that when they see me, they see a person who is representing Christ on earth. I promise you, he wasn't draped in diamonds at all. And so when I look at those things, anything that we do for the purpose of pleasing man, we're out of order.
Even if you're the man that's being pleased.
Even if we're the man. So we have to look at, why do we care about that? Why do we care about the ring? Why do we care about the gifts? Why do we have to lay out the gifts on social? It's for the gram. So you argued up to getting all the gifts. You're going to argue on the other side of getting all the gifts, but you did it for the gram? So for me, when I'm looking at it, I don't want anything that is for the benefit of other people.
All right, well, Keith, set us straight.
It's wisdom. It's wisdom.
Think about all those gifts that people laid out over Christmas time. If they invested all of that, talk about decreasing the wealth gap. We keep going back to this. There's certain parts that are our responsibility, and this notion of, well, I'm going to spend it all in my lifetime. We can't take it with us, and so I'm going to spend it. And it's like, yeah, but then you can't do that and be mad at the government for the wealth gap.
Teach.
Because we play a part in this. And so for me, when people are looking at me, when they come up to me, and I'll see them post on social media, she was so down to earth. Well, what did you expect me to be? And their expectation is based on what people have put out there, right? It's like on my Instagram account, I respond to everybody. You DM me, I respond. If you put a comment, I'm going to the very least acknowledge, but I respond in some way, shape, or form to everyone. Why? Because you've taken the time to come and to speak to me. So this whole notion of I'm so big that it makes me look bigger if I just drop something on social and I don't respond to anybody. So I think it's still that we have to break that cycle. And I don't know how we break it, but I do believe that the relationship that we have is because he and I show up as our true selves in our relationship. We don't show up as representatives of ourselves. Most people show up as reps.
Yep.
Here's the problem with showing up with reps. And I get why people do it. They do it to protect themselves. They do it. It's almost like the celebrities that have the alter ego when they get on stage. They're one other person. They're really doing that to protect themselves, because you can comment on and bash Sasha Fierce, right? You can just go after her, but it hurts if you're Beyonce and you bash Beyonce, but it don't hurt if you bash Sasha. So you have all these entertainers, and we show up as representatives of ourselves to prevent hurt. Here's the problem. God doesn't bless reps.
Oh, God.
So our marriage is blessed the way that it is because we're showing up as who we are authentically. So God pouring down that anointing oil, he knows exactly where to drop it because we are who we are.
What was going on in your life where you tried to take your life twice?
When I was 20, going up to, so from the time I was from birth until the time I left at 15, and then going through, I lived in 3 homeless shelters by the time I was 18. So my 18th birthday was in a homeless shelter. So imagine I'm 15, I leave home, I drop out of high school, I move to Watts, move to Jordan Downs. I'm in Jordan Downs and I'm actually loving the freedom because the parents there aren't telling them, and I'm loving it. I go to a hip hop concert, and in the middle of the hip hop concert, the rapper literally stops the DJ and says, "DJ, stop the music, stop the music," looks dead at me. And mind you, surrounded by people in Watts, and he looks at me and he points at me and he says, "We have a half breed in the house." So I'm experiencing colorism for the first time in my life in the projects.
He stopped the concert.
He stopped the concert with me saying, "We've got a half breed in the house." First of all, I use sunscreen now. I didn't then. So at that point, I don't even know what he was looking at other than my eye color, because there was definitely nothing on my skin tone that would have said. And so, but literally he told the DJ, "Stop the music," pointed at me. "We got a half breed in the house." And so for the first time in that environment, I felt unsafe. Now, mind you, this is, every day, Grape Street Crips, there were purple bandanas on antennas coming through there every single day because somebody died. The Nickerson Bounty Hunters, they would do the same thing, but they like to do their red things on their bikes and roll through and all the rest of that. But every day, multiple people were dying every single day. And I still had no issue moving in between. The guy I was dating was at Nickerson Gardens. I'd walk in between the two. I never felt fear going between it. And then that happened. And I looked around and I was like, oh, I'm not safe here.
Wow.
And so I left immediately and I went to go stay with someone. Her boyfriend came over, big old knife in hand, that whole thing in the apartment. I was like, so homeless shelter sounds good. And literally from a payphone, just dialing the numbers to get help and the free numbers, the 611s or the whatever. I think at that time it was like 411. And they led me to a place called My Friend's Place. And I went there. It's one of those transitional homeless shelters that then placed me at another place called Children of the Night, which was interesting because Children of the Night was literally for people that were on drugs or human trafficked, and I wasn't any of those things. But that was the place that had a bed for somebody who was under 18. And then as soon as I turned 18, they had to transition me to Covenant House. So this is, by the time I'm 18, this is my life. I start my first business at 18 and just doing what came natural to me, just creating brand experiences, PR. I was like, okay, finally, I have figured this out. I can just kind of live authentically me. And for anybody who has decided that they are going to live authentically as them, that's not an easy decision. Nope. There's a reason people don't live authentically. And so my entire life was just tough. And by the time I got to 20, and now I can look back at it and go, I'm a child. My brain is not fully formed. I'm looking at this and going, the first 20 years of my life have been so much work. They have been so hard. Do I really want to do this another 40 or 50? And I decided no. And I would probably say that the thing that has shaped my life the most outside of marrying this incredible man, the thing that has shaped my life the most was when I tried to commit suicide the second time. And they had one of those tubes through my nostrils, and I will never forget the sound of it going through the cartilage. It's a cringy sound when it just like goes in, and they're pumping charcoal into my stomach to try to pull out everything that I consumed. I didn't do drugs and I didn't drink alcohol. And so I figured if I took everything that was in my sister's cabinet, I was at her house, took everything that's in my sister's cabinet, like Advil, Tylenol, like everything, and then combined it with as much alcohol as I could. Well, because I didn't have any of those, my body instantly threw it up. And so, my attempt at it wasn't very good. But I'm in the hospital and they're trying to get everything else out. And I remember being in the ambulance, going to the hospital. I remember being there, them putting that through them. But I remember them also talking around me, because when you try to commit suicide twice that close together, they then have to check you into a place, behavioral health hospital. And so, but I remember laying in that bed and having the doctors around me talking and going, okay, I've tried to take myself out twice and haven't been successful, which means I'm here for a reason. I'm here on purpose. I lived authentically as me up until that point, but it was really uncomfortable to be that in a world and in a society where everybody was showing two different sides. Like you're one person in this situation, you're another person in this situation. It was very difficult to say, no, I'm going to just be me. And from that point forward, I was like, I am here for a purpose, but that purpose is tied to who I am authentically. So living authentically as me and unapologetically as me from that moment forward became very easy. The other thing was I determined in my mind that if after trying twice, God would not allow me to take myself out, he wasn't going to let anybody else take me out.
Oh, God.
So
that right there.
For me, I can walk through this life authentically and not be concerned about people scheming. People are like, what do you say to the haters? What haters? Who got time for haters? I have a purpose. My purpose is tied to what God has for my life. Address a hater? Are you kidding me? I literally don't have time for that. And so my life has been so unbelievably intentional and focused from that moment on at 20 years old. And I can tell you, after that second attempt, and then I went to the behavioral health hospital, which will cure you real fast. When you see all those people doing all this and they're trying to give me pills, I'm putting it under my tongue and spitting it out. And because I didn't take not one of those pills, I don't know what those things were. Yep. But as soon as I could get out of there, and my sister came and she got me out. But it was, for me, I would say the greatest gift that I could have been given, because for the next 6 months, I decided the only thing I would do is work. And I worked for myself. Only thing I would do is work and digest every book I possibly could to help me understand how I got there. And then also to help me understand how I could become a whole person.
Oh, that's good.
So by the time I finished that 6-month period of time, it was a book my mother wrote, actually, called Knight in Shining Armor. And she had a recommendation for women that you would go under construction, not date anybody, don't think about anybody, don't talk to anybody. And you go under construction to just work on you. And so for 6 months, I read every single book. I read the Bible cover to cover, I don't know how many times. My utmost for his highest, that was my daily. And then just added on to all of these different books. But the one book that I would say was most transformative outside of the Bible and my utmost for his highest was a book called Please Understand Me, Part 2. And that book is a Myers, whatever that personality is, Myers-Briggs, right? Myers-Briggs. And you take this personality test. What I learned is my personality, INTJ. It's called the mastermind or the architect. When it comes to women, there's less than 1% of us in the entire world. From that moment forward, I decided I don't need you to understand me.
Ooh.
And when you free yourself of trying to explain yourself.
Oh, that's good.
When I talk, I'm hopeful that it's helpful to people, but I'm never telling people what they should do, what they have to do. I'm just telling what I do. And if that's helpful to you, awesome. But I'm not here for you.
Well, fine.
Yes, right. Whoa, speechless.
He is going to say, you're speechless.
Man,
He's like, where do we take the conversation?
Yeah, because I want to shout right now. I want to speak in tongues. I want to do all this. But let's just talk about this juxtaposition between this charcoal that was used to help save your life, and then what differentiates Kentucky whiskey and Tennessee whiskey is charcoal.
Yeah.
Did you find that as an amazing revelation when you look at that? When did that moment come where you can say, hold on, Holy Spirit. What is this?
It is, it's really interesting because obviously for your folks who watch who don't know who I am, just do a quick Google search. It'll
I'm going to tell you
up.
who she is. So Fawn Weaver has created a $1.1 billion evaluated company that's a whiskey brand, Uncle Nearest. Now, when you start reading about Uncle Nearest, tears will drop down your face, which I love how you reclaimed our history with that. Of course, it's going to always be controversial, this radical woman of God that is the CEO and owner and founder of a whiskey brand. It's like, now, hold on, this don't make sense. But
it only makes sense if you don't know the Bible.
She gonna tell you that in a little bit. So she gonna say his first miracle was turning water into wine.
First miracle. For a party in which everybody had drunk all the wine. So but go ahead.
So she has created the fastest growing whiskey brand in the history of the United States.
Yes.
And you've done it in an unconventional way. You've challenged every naysayer. People have said that every strategy that you created should fail, and you attest to it. Yeah, I should have failed by now. And the hand of God is over it clearly because it has exploded.
Yeah.
With a valuation of 1.1 billion, emphasis on $1 billion.
Yeah, it's there is no question. My mother's a teetotaler.
Did I leave anything out first?
No, okay. You're good.
Okay.
My mother is a teetotaler, and my father was as well. And we would have these conversations because so many people repeat what their pastors say, but as a person who gets phone calls from these pastor groups where they want to bring in Uncle Nearest so that they can smoke cigars and enjoy some whiskey without the prying eyes of the congregation. And I'm going, well, why don't you just tell the congregation it's not wrong and then y'all could stop hiding? Like what
the life you talked about that you ran from early on?
It doesn't make any sense to me. And so from a biblical standpoint, there is absolutely positively zero in the Bible that tells people that they are not to drink. Nothing. And when you're looking at, there are so many scriptural references to drinking, but not getting drunk. That's the key. And so my father and I, where we would have this debate, is he'd say, well, and this was always his response, and this has always been the Baptist folks' responses, and apostolic and Pentecostal, but anyway, is that the wine they were drinking back then weren't as fermented. It wasn't as strong. And I was like, I'm sorry, who was it that slept with his daughters? Oh, that's Noah. And who was it that they literally were so drunk out of their mind that they were naked and their sons had to cover them? Oh, that would be Lot. Okay. So I don't know what they were drinking then, but that wine was stronger than my whiskey because I don't know anybody that drank Uncle Nearest and their kids had to cover them up because they were naked, nor do I know of anyone who drank Uncle Nearest and then decided to sleep with his daughters, not once, but 2 nights in a row, 2 different daughters. Okay. So I think we got to get better about reading the Bible on our own because the Bible creates freedom.
Yeah.
And that's the part that the church has done a really good job of boxing us in.
Were you drinking before you created the brand?
Yeah. Okay. And bourbon was my drink of choice.
Because you said earlier, like when you were younger, you wasn't.
I didn't. But as this was
my contribution. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Keith introduced you to it?
Yes. That was something I was introduced to. But I used to have a far more rigid, right? But then when I read the Bible for myself, I'm like, a lot of times if you grow up, because I grew up Southern Baptist, right? And then I went to apostolic. Then I went to, shout out to Bishop Noel Jones and Clarence McClendon. I went to all of those churches and even Bishop Omer, although I'm not sure if Bishop Omer still believes it or still says people can't drink. He knows the word too well for that. But going through that, I literally had to go back and read the Bible for myself. The beauty now is because we have AI, we can literally go to ChatGPT and say, ChatGPT, where in the Bible does it tell me I shouldn't drink? And you'll be shocked because ChatGPT knows the Bible in every concordance. It is so wild. It is. I use it for Bible study every day, really. Yeah. And so when you look at it, you're like, wait a minute, this is something that was created to be enjoyed. And yet we have made it something. But the reason I believe we did it is the church was behind the temperance movement, right? So this is remnants of the temperance movement we just have never gone away from. But going back to your original question on the charcoal, when I told her I was doing this, her response to me was, I really am proud of you and what you are doing for that man and his family. But I sure do wish he made lemonade. That was my mother's response. And every one of her Baptist friends,
it would be a different
every one of her Baptist friends had something to say. Every single one. Maybe. They were calling her, making her feel bad about what we were doing.
They'll take that tithe.
They will listen. You better believe it. You better believe it.
None have been returned.
And none of the tithes have been returned. And so my mother, as hard as it's been because of all of her friends talking in her ears and all the rest of that stuff, she said to me last year, she said, there is no other way to explain this than the hand of God.
You can't.
There's no other way.
You can't, because as smart as you are, you're not smart enough to connect all those dots until you be introduced to it. Right. I mean, even when I was watching the video that Forbes did on you, they did an amazing job. And it was talking about how even one of the heirs or whatever to I just draw a blank.
Nearest Green or Jack Daniels?
Jack Daniels. She said, if you ever want to build a brand based on that, I'll come out of retirement.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, because you have to do something at a specific time so the people that can help don't die off. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it has to be in perfect timing, which you said earlier today in the conversation about even buying the watch or whatever. It has to be in this perfect timing. And so for that, I was like, hold on, how will it be at that precise time also for the whole distiller, all this land, this acreage, 300 acres be available for sale?
Look, we own the original distillery number 7.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how could that never happen?
It doesn't. When people are reading Love and Whiskey, one of the things I said to investors early on, when they would come to where the original distillery number 7 is, where Jack Daniel grew up, where Nearest Green was the master distiller, when they would come to that 313 acre property that we owned in the hills right above Lynchburg, Tennessee, then they just kind of would look around and go, how in the world? And what I would say to them is, if you do not believe in God, you will by the time this day is over. And so if you look at how this company was built, God's hand is everywhere. So go back to, I don't want to be Saul. So when I make decisions, how I talk to him, how I interact with people, what I do on a daily basis, it is all in service to making sure that the hand of God that is so clearly over my life, my marriage, Uncle Nearest, everything that we touch, I don't want that hand to be removed from me. And I look at our marriage as being so foundational to that. I can't even imagine hurting him, because if I hurt him, I got to deal with his daddy about that.
Let me tell you how beautiful even y'all's connection, and I always like reframing husband and wife as purpose partners, because if you really understand the purpose that y'all have, you see how y'all are connected and tethered to each other's hearts and minds in order to fulfill purpose. Keith, has a real estate background. It makes all the sense in the world. Y'all run around buying up everything. It makes
He taught me.
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. Y'all can go buy 313 acres. He was in commercial real estate. When I'm listening to you and I'm going, no wonder why y'all were able to spread out all across the United States and y'all can spread it in all these countries and all that. Well, look at what he used to do.
Yeah.
He was speaking to other countries and stuff like that. Your position was global. What was the name of the title?
Executive Vice President, Global Policy and Public Affairs.
So it makes all the sense in the world. It's like, always like looking at the tutelage that is taking place while you're still in the field. Yeah. As Shepherd Boy David was still in the field, that's how he was able to run a kingdom. And so God allowed Keith to go through his journey, allowed you to go through your journey, and then y'all come together for such a time as this to do great exploits. I absolutely love it. That's the reason why I love unpacking the stories in the relational journey of couples, because you'll be able to hear and be like, there is no, because remember we started off saying, now could you have accomplished this without him? That sounds cute. That sounds lovey-dovey. That sounds like a great Hallmark and a great Lifetime movie. But could you have accomplished this? You said absolutely not. And when you start unpacking it, it's not just the emotional connection. It's not just the spiritual alignment. It's the skill set that he has that comes along with your skill set, and y'all do this thing together.
Exactly. There are certain personalities, and this is going to give away one of our secrets, but that's okay.
Oh boy, not another one. Another one's on page 236 of the book.
Yeah. So, but there are certain negotiations I will pass to him because his demeanor is better situated for that.
Yes.
I don't like to waste time. And if a person's personality needs a whole lot of time for negotiations,
you'd be like, baby,
tap you in, baby. Tap you in. Because this negotiation gonna die on the vine, because I am not going to
have these long conversations.
I'm not going to have these long conversations. But this is a thing that if folks watching this don't take anything else away from this, although I hope they do, I truly believe that every person who is married when it comes to success in life and business. You have a built-in advantage.
There it is.
It's a built-in advantage because if you look at, say, for instance, you are running a marathon. Have you ever run a marathon?
Not at all.
Okay, so we both have. It's highly overrated.
Oh Jesus!
But one of the things you learn when you run marathons is that there is such a thing as a relay within the marathon.
Oh, really?
In which every person who was a part of that relay gets the medal at the end. But they only ran a portion of the race.
Oh.
When you look at marriage, that is really what it is you are able to finish and go further because you don't have to have every part of it. You don't have to do all of it. He taps me in on things that I can get done faster. I tap him in on things where I know he can get it done faster. We use our brain trust. The way that God has fashioned me is different than the way he's fashioned him. His background, my background, two completely different backgrounds. But that means that we both have street smarts like nobody's business. Do not cross us in the boardroom. It will not go well for you. But because of how we were brought up, the way that we show that is very different. And so for a lot of couples, if they join together and they use what God has given them, and it's like, there's no ego here. Hey, babe, you go take that negotiation because you're going to be able to close that deal better than I can close that. We do that all day long.
Yes.
All day long.
Yes. Was that something y'all had to learn? Or y'all just naturally flew into y'all just flowed into that?
I feel like we really learn that so
I'm telling you, it's because we thug. Truly humble under God.
Wow.
We got a thug marriage.
Oh, man. Thug life.
Thug life.
You're going to get tatted on your stomach.
Thug life.
Yeah, my stomach's big, too. It'll be bigger than Tupac's.
Okay, all you Christians, do not start putting thug life
on your page.
Do not put thug life.
Put it under her comment. Hashtag thug life.
Hashtag thug life. But we do. We really are. And so I think for us, we instinctively go to God. So if he does something that doesn't sit well with me, I go to God before I go to him.
That's good.
So a lot of times things that he does that I didn't like or didn't
Very,
sit
very
well with
rarely.
me.
He said very rarely. He said he's perfect. He's perfect.
He's
He
lower
doesn't
than the
do-
angels. Crown with glory and honor.
He listens to God. He's connected. He doesn't do anything wrong.
But I would probably say if I didn't do that, if I didn't have that practice, that at least, I mean, I don't know how often, but pretty often, I'd be going to him about something that maybe I would have done differently, or maybe I would have, but when I took it to God first, God was like, oh, you focused on him. This was for you. And so the thing about God, which is really interesting, which people that are connected to him know this, if you go to him about someone else, the likelihood that he's going to show you is real high. That's why people don't like to go to him. They already know the end result and so it dies before it ever gets to him. And by the way, it's not just where the Lord is like, hold your tongue. No. He actually changes my heart.
That part.
He changes my entire heart posture about a situation that in most relationships and in most households would probably turn into an argument. But he looks at it and goes, oh, no, you wouldn't. Mm-mm.
Let me ask you this real quick as we get ready to wrap up. How much are y'all happy financially? Are you saying, we still got in our mind, we got this big number where we like, are you happy financially?
I don't know what happy financially means. I can tell you that I don't have a single goal that involves a number. I don't have a single goal that involves a number or anything financial.
So what is it?
To please God.
But what if God's already pleased?
That's a daily exercise.
I'm talking when you say not a goal, y'all buying up the block, y'all buying up stuff, y'all built this amazing brand, 1.1 billion. People keep trying to throw money at y'all. You said there's no number you can buy it from me because I want to give this to the next generation. What is
You know what's funny about 1.1 billion? When I hear that, I laugh.
It's so little.
Because when you
it's so little.
When you get to a billion,
it's so little.
Then you look up and you're like, the billion and trillionaires are like, oh, that's so cute.
That's so cute.
Oh, baby,
that's
go.
So cute. That's like, remember that Chris Rock joke?
Yes.
Where Chris Rock said if Bill Gates woke up with Oprah's money, he would jump out a window and slit his neck on the way down, right? So when you're in our industry, in the spirits industry, there has never been a woman or person of color to succeed before, right? The smallest spirit conglomerate in our country, the smallest one is worth about $40 billion.
Right.
So people look at that number. Yeah.
Do that $1 billion.
Yeah, like you,
one point,
so cute.
Add your point one to it.
It is everything that I do every day is purpose driven and it is not tied to money. Not a bit of it. So happy. I will say that from a life standpoint, relationship standpoint, marriage standpoint, I can truly, honestly, authentically say I don't know anyone who has one like us.
Yeah.
They not like us.
Yeah, they not like us.
It's also not intuitive though. When you're focused on the money part of it, the result that you're seeking and focusing on that doesn't come, or at least it hasn't come for us. Where we've been most successful is focusing on the purpose or the why of it. Yeah. It sounds like so enlightened, but it's true.
Yeah.
Everything that we've done, we focused on what's going to be material to this objective, not the financial part of it. And then the finances and the wealth and all that has come as a result of it, but that's not the thing to focus on. And it never has been.
And we put everything that we have, we put it back in the business.
Yeah.
So even if we wanted to go spend a whole lot of money on something, I guess we could pull it out of something. True. We could pull it out of something.
He said we got it.
We, you know, we right? But
no, we can't buy.
But we.
He said, let's keep it real now.
Keep it real.
But we roll everything back in. It's either roll into real estate, even our lake home that we left because we love you to come see you.
Clearly.
Even
just
our
take it back with y'all.
Yeah.
Call it fair.
3 levels. We're good.
But even that lake home was a fixer upper that was poorly marketed. And we went in there, did just cosmetic, did not spend what, 25 grand, maybe?
A little
50?
bit than that.
Maybe
Okay.
50?
Yeah.
And it went from being $1 million property to a $2 million property. And we put maybe 50 grand into it.
How in the world is that possible?
Easy. We look for the
Deals.
depressed pricing. And it's everywhere. We always want the shiny new house.
Yeah.
The thing about, there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah. I haven't read it though, but I've heard of it.
One of the great things it says in there is that you should always buy the least impressive house in the most expensive neighborhood.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because that is, we like to go in, and because we like to show off the big diamonds and all the rest of that stuff, we're going in and we're buying stuff at exactly
the value.
The value. When we go in, every property that we have ever purchased, our home, we bought at auction, where you literally could put your finger through a concrete wall and it would, like, because it was sand, right?
It was really wild.
It was sand. But we're on, I mean, what was the auction price?
So it was.
Now, this is our primary residence.
I'll describe it first. So it's on 40 acres.
Oh, okay.
It's about a little bit north of 7,000 square feet, the main house. It has 2 guest houses, a barn, and it's on the highest peak.
360 view.
A 360 unobstructable view. And it's gated. You go up to a hill. It's like very grand. $383,000.
At auction.
Yeah. So
You
said 40 acres.
40 acres.
We paid separate for the acreage, though, right? The
True.
first 25 acres
right.
was included in that 3.
125.
And then y'all bought the other 15.
Mm-hmm. But the house was, nobody had lived in it for 20 years.
There are animals in there.
Like literally there, but nobody had lived in it for 20 years. And so we looked at it and we were like, oh yeah, so we could put a couple $100,000 in that and it'll be worth $2 million. But we're always willing to do the work.
It's worth more than $2 million.
It's worth more. But it's
worth way more than $2 million. Can't play with me, huh? Shoot. I understand real estate. Ain't 40 houses and guest house, 40 acres and guest house. You said 2 guest houses?
2 guest houses.
2 guest houses, 7,000 square foot.
But when you look at that, it is, again, it's an investment. So every single thing that we buy, we look for something. The distillery, it's now a $60 million distillery. Yeah. But when we bought it because it was a dilapidated horse farm. And the prior owners bought it for the land and they wanted to take it and make it a subdivision of homes. And then they discovered the ground was too soft because there were too many springs underneath it. Ooh, that's a beautiful thing for whiskey. Hello. So we bought this property, but the property was depressed. And so as a group of people, I hope we stop going after the shiny.
Teach me. That's what I'm saying. It's the reality of these kind of normalized conversations. We need to normalize this conversation because unfortunately we come from the space, and I know it. I'm a living witness, is that you grow up poor and the first thing you want to do is get something to show that you made it, right? And you're trying to not only prove it to other people, but even for yourself. You don't know what it feels like to have a brand new car right off the showroom floor when you know it depreciates 30% when you drive it off, but you still say, I don't care. I need this for my own self-esteem. You go get a house. You say, I want a really nice house. I want a new build or whatnot. But we do need to normalize these conversations that y'all having, because that's the reality. And it's you got to be very discriminate about who you decide to marry that has that forethought to not look at it like, look, this man done got me this old raggedy house. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's like
when we met, he wasn't a tither. And that was my non-negotiable.
Me too.
Or a Sabbath observer.
So I had 2 non-negotiables, which was I observe the Sabbath. I had for quite some time by the time we met and we have together. And by the Sabbath, I don't mean it has to be on a Saturday. It has to be on a Sunday. It's just always within 7 days.
Yeah.
And the other is tithing. That was a non-negotiable for me. I was that person who used to take 10%, put it in an envelope, and then I would borrow from the envelope. And I remember getting into a lot of debt when I was 20 years old because I kept borrowing from the envelope to pay for the different stuff. And I got into so much debt, I didn't have no tithing in the envelope. And I and I promised the Lord then, if He would get me out of that I would never again borrow from my tithes.
Will a man rob God?
Right. Exactly. But I will say, I do think that this is the place where the church should begin leading. When I look at, we attended Rick Warren's church. That was the last church we attended. Rick Warren,
Purpose-Driven Life.
Purpose-Driven Life. That book has, made him easily $100 million.
Yep.
Drives an old car. Lives in an old, basic house. He didn't take salary from Saddleback. He would, when you meet him, the simplest person. Well, what that does is that creates a church in which the folks in there are developing wealth because they're not trying to keep up with the pastor. They talk about keeping up with the Joneses. What people are really trying to do is keep up with the pastor. And so if we have the power to break that as a group of people. And I understand why a lot of pastors do it. It comes from a poverty mindset.
Yes.
And it's what we came from, right? And you want to show what is possible with God. And so I get it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. What I'm saying is that we do have the power to break that so that we as a group of people can create generational wealth. That has to start in the church because so many of us, that is our foundation. Whether or not you go to the church on Sunday after having been at the club on Saturday it's of no consequence to this conversation. Right. The reality is you still showed up at church, right? Because that is a part of our foundation.
Drinking your Uncle Nearest at the club.
Listen.
Exactly.
Actually, the funny thing is you won't find Uncle Nearest at the club.
Why not?
Because I believe in drinking honorably. And people don't go to the club to drink honorably.
Hold on, really?
Mm-mm.
So you tell me...
Find me in a club.
So you can't, I don't go to clubs, so I can't find it. Well, I guess you just telling me to go to clubs. So I'm going to go to club tonight.
Exactly.
You won't find Uncle Nearest.
Really?
So here's the thing is that...
So you can control where it goes?
You can't, but clubs are, for the most part, payola.
Okay.
Right? So people going in there, they're paying them a lot of money. So if you aren't doing that...
Then you ain't going to be there.
You're not going to be there.
You don't care.
And no, well, for me... Uncle Nearest is always, I don't want anybody drunk on it. I don't want anybody over drinking. Drinking responsibly, that campaign has been around forever. But the liquor guys will say, drink responsibly. But then the commercial is a big party in which everybody is getting drunk, right? Yeah. And so from the very beginning, our tagline was drink honorably. That means you should be able to sit there and have a glass of whiskey with your pastor, which we have done. Our local pastor doesn't drink, but his wife does. So, but at least he acknowledges that he does that as a personal preference, not because it's biblical. And I do have a lot of respect for him that he does say that.
Right.
But when you sit down and you're able to just sip, you will not find me out drunk or tipsy. I don't even like the feeling of being tipsy. I understand what it's for. And I sit and I drink and we enjoy together, Uncle Nearest, but we're not getting drunk. And so that I think is the difference in the club atmosphere. I'm not saying there's no judgment on my behalf on it, but the environment is an environment where people drink to get drunk for the most part.
It makes sense. That made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I could talk to y'all all day and y'all got a plane to catch.
Yeah, we do. We got to get back to our lake house.
Yes, let me tell you. So y'all can just go kick it and get your braids back in your head.
They're about to be braided
take all your makeup off and bring in the new year and have lots of fun.
Yeah.
Listen, man. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for taking the time to chop it up with me. Y'all have filled me so much. I'm just sitting here just chewing on the wisdom, the gems that y'all have dropped, and helping us to reimagine marriage. Because we really don't, we struggle with that. And it vexes my spirit when I look down my timeline and I hear the black woman against the black man and the black man against the black woman, and they say men lose in marriage and there's nothing to gain in marriage when the statistics show that men live longer if they get married. You earn more money when you're married. There's all these other great benefits from marriage, but we're sold this bag of lies to say we don't need our black queens, and black queens, we don't need our black kings, and we can do bad all by myself. That rhetoric, instead of saying, why we gotta do bad all by myself? Why can't we be great together? That don't even make sense. But we say I can do bad all by myself. Why I ain't trying to do bad by myself. So why are we gonna try to do bad by myself? So it's this crazy rhetoric. And so I needed y'all for this episode, for this purpose, so we can amplify love. Anything else you want to say before we conclude?
They would use less plastic surgery if they would just be happily married. I'm not kidding. If you spend time around happily married couples, you will find that there is a level of fountain of youth. And I'm only saying that because there's way too many of us getting plastic surgery right now. So, and I think a part of that is that when you have somebody who loves you for you,
there it is.
You don't start messing with stuff.
Yeah.
And so you're able to just age gracefully. So when we did our video that was for our 21st anniversary and people were like, wait a minute, the numbers aren't adding up. You don't even look 35. Fountain of youth, I believe, is in happy marriages. So that's the kind of the funny part of it. But although I do believe it, but really we as the church, if we got our marriages right, talk about I will draw all men unto me.
Teach.
That if we were the model, we wouldn't even have to say anything. People would want to come in and to experience what we're experiencing, that happiness, that love, that joy, that laughter, that playfulness, that being accepted exactly who you are, being respected in your household more than anywhere else in the world. They would want that. And we are a really, really, really poor representation of Christ when it comes to our marriages.
Challenge. Keith.
I just wanted to thank you for letting the Lord work through you to create a platform and an environment for something like this to happen and to bless so many people. So I thank you for that. I think it's beautiful and well prepared and executed and all the things. So.
And last words of wisdom, because you're the wisest person I know.
Last words of wisdom. Oh, Lord, put me on the spot.
I want you to talk to men.
Oh, man. Gosh, the gender roles that we have been shackled within need to be broken. And they need to be broken so we can be free.
Yeah.
And we can be free in the context of who we are as men. Manhood is not defined by this really weird construct of masculine lording over a false definition of what submission should be, and show up as your authentic self, be confident and be comfortable and be authentic. And that will set you free and allow a relationship like this, like we have, to exist.
Listen.
You're cute too.
I gotta let them go because they're finna go back to that lake house and do what married people do. I see it. It's already starting. I already see it. It's already brewing. It's already brewing.
If the couch were
it's already distilling.
Percolating.
It's already percolating. It's already the lake house is calling their name. Listen, thank y'all so much for all that y'all doing. I just love what y'all represent. Keep doing what y'all do. Blessings y'all way, and keep laughing at the 1.1 billion.
We really do.
I said, well, people will laugh at something that people have goals for. I'll be like, she just laugh at 1.1 billion. Like, shoot, I just paid the lottery trying to win the 1.22 billion.
When you get there, you'll see.
You'll get there, and you'll see, and you'll be like, oh yeah, but when you know how great it is what God has for you, you won't settle and you won't get excited because the number excites other people. You already know what the goal is that God has for you, and the number that He has for us, we're not close to
at all.
Well, amen. Well, thank y'all so much for watching the episode of the podcast. Y'all give it up for the Weavers, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to the end for a letter to my future wifey.
Been writing these love letters to you. Ladarian, thrusted suddenly into Child Protective Services in 2015. My nephew, Black, a boy. The likelihood of being adopted outside of kinship, slim to none. Armani, 16 years old, Black, a boy, with 5 years in the foster care system before I even knew his name. The likelihood of ever being adopted, yep, you guessed it, slim to none. While Ladarian and Armani were trying to survive and barely thrive in an overpopulated and underfunded foster care system, I was living my own life, doing well professionally. Having been a single father with a daughter who at that point was doing well in college, it was my time to live my life, right? Wrong. I felt unsettled, tireless, agitated. There are just too many of our Black children stuck in ambiguity and in the limbo of the foster care system. In 2017, I legally adopted my nephew, Ladarian. Fast forward to 2019, I had no ties to this other young king, but I felt God instructed me to adopt him also, and I obeyed. Starting over with parenting should have been enough, right? Working with various foster care and adoption agencies to help bring awareness to the countless young Black kings in the foster care system should have decreased my agitation, right? Joining the board of directors of Advantage Adoption, an organization that helps find permanent adoptive homes for children in foster care, should have led to some type of resolve, right? No, not at all. None of it felt like I had done enough. I now realize that every one of those experiences was laying the fundamental foundation for my life's mission, Kingdom Royale. Kingdom Royale will be a luxury, state-of-the-art home for foster boys. Our first location will be in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We will utilize the whole person approach that instills identity, empowers them to advocate for themselves, and enlightens them regarding new perspectives and limitless options that they thought were impossible. Though the young kings will attend the local public schools that are in proximity to Kingdom Royale, our at-home curriculum will broaden their worldview through participating in the arts, attending various cultural events, learning about and engaging in multifaceted discussions about current events and even relevant historical context, introducing them to gardening and landscaping and even caring for our animals on our farm and on-site stables. We just launched our Startup Capital campaign with the goal of raising $2.8 million. Now, why $2.8 million? Well, in 2017, I created a web series in which I performed random acts of kindness for targeting the homeless community. One of the most notable successes was that one of the videos went viral, garnering 28 million views. However, one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't raise a single dollar to help in implementing a more sustainable plan for the homeless community. So throughout the years, with much remorse, I reflected on not maximizing that moment. I knew if at that time, just 10% of the viewers donated $1, we would have raised at least $2.8 million that could have really established long-term support for the homeless community, or at least started a long-term initiative to do so. This is my do-over. This is our new beginning. Together, we can attack this at the root by specifically helping our homeless Black boys who are already disproportionately represented in the American foster care system. I'm Laterras Whitfield. I've been nominated for 3 regional Emmys documenting my work with the homeless as well as my personal adoption journey. Despite those accolades, the greatest award for me is truly providing the infrastructure for a transformed life. Visit kingdomroyale.com for more details. Crown a king and make a donation today. Didn't y'all enjoy this episode with the Weavers? They are absolutely magnificent, man. When I tell you this episode touched my heart in ways that y'all can't even imagine. Well, here's my favorite part of the podcast where I speak to my future wifey. And before I read this letter, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to each and every one of y'all in the Lit Fam. I pray that this year is everything that you desire it to be. I want you to set goals, not New Year's resolutions, but set goals. And I want you to accomplish those goals. Remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Now, here's my favorite part as I jump into this letter. Now, dear future wifey, 2025 is here, and my motto for this year is Amplify 2025. Amplify what, you may ask? Amplify love, amplify purpose, amplify connection. This year, I am turning the volume up on what truly matters. And at the center of it all is you. I've spent years healing, growing, and preparing for this moment. Every lesson I've learned, every tear I've cried, every prayer I've prayed has led me to this pivotal chapter. 2025 isn't just another year. It's the year I believe God will align our paths in His perfect timing. My desire to marry you this year isn't driven by impatience, but by readiness. I'm ready to lead and to follow, to laugh and to cry, to build and to rebuild with you. I want our marriage to reflect the beauty of Christ's love for His church, a love that is sacrificial, enduring, and pure. As I prepare to meet you at the altar, I commit to amplifying love in every area of my life. This means loving God first, loving myself well, and loving others authentically. I believe this foundation will make us unstoppable. I'm imagining that moment when you walk down the aisle, the anticipation giving way to joy as I see the woman who was worth the wait. My love, this will be the year we silence the noise of doubt and amplify the melody of love. Your future hubby.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dear Future Wifey podcast. Remember, be lit, live intentionally and transparently, and don't stop loving.
Make sure to subscribe to our Dear Future Wifey YouTube channel. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. We welcome your support. Simply share our podcast with your friends and family.